WOTW HD2 Windermere, Bud 94.1. From the attorneys Justin Clark and Associates YouHavePower.com studios, this is Behind the Law with attorney Justin Clark.
Hey, happy weekend to you, and thank you for joining me for another edition of Behind the Law with me, attorney Justin Clark. Here to answer any legal question that you may have, anything from accident to zoning. Dial up the phone 321-282-1055. The website, where plenty of information is as well, is www.youhavepower.com. You can watch the show live on Facebook, on my personal Facebook page, or at ATTY Justin Clark. Just search Justin Clark and pull it up, and you'll be able to watch the show or any past show as well. We talked about thousands of legal issues on the show over the last, year, basically. So feel free to watch live anytime. I also want you to go to the App Store and download the Bud 94.1 app. I mean, this app is fantastic.
Always a good idea.
And you can watch it, you can watch or listen to the show or the station from anywhere in the world, right from your smartphone.
We also posted on the Bud 94.1 Facebook page.
321-282-1055, youhavepower.com. During the week, we focus mostly on bankruptcy, IRS problems, real estate, personal injury, and even your student loan problems. But for the purposes of today, you can call me for anything you want. 321-282-1055. We got a pretty special show in store for you today. One of my lawyers actually is the main bankruptcy lawyer at the firm. His name is Wayne Spivak. He's going to come in and answer a couple questions that have been bothering me for a while. Because you probably didn't know that how you put your names on your car title make a huge difference.
That's right.
So the car title is or so let's say you're husband and wife, and you put John and Jane Smith, or Jane or John Smith makes a big difference.
Really?
And we're going to tell you about the issues that we have with that and what is the best way to really put on your car title, or also for your house. I mean, do you want to have the type of ownership on your home where if someone dies, it goes to the other person or it goes to the heirs of the person that dies? So a lot of different ways to title your house and your car, which you really want to stick around for. We're going to talk about personal injury a little bit as well. People ask me all the time because they see all these television commercials about personal injury lawyers and like, what's really going on there? I mean, how much money can I really get from my case? A little later in the program, we're going to talk about student loans. You hear about student loans all the time. Student loans are a huge problem in this country, and they're really becoming one of the biggest financial burdens for the kids coming out of school, or even the adults who go back to like a technical college. They become a huge, huge problem. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the real estate market here locally. People ask me pretty much daily, what do I think? Is it still going to go up? Is it leveling out? Or are we going to have another crash? So I'm going to give you my thoughts on that and what you should do if you're really out there looking for a house, trying to get a mortgage, or even trying to refi your house. Joining me to my right, I believe, is my good friend and Orlando radio legend, Mick Dolan. Mick, how are you, sir?
I'm great, buddy. Great.
Thanks for being here.
I'm looking forward to this advice.
When I say Orlando radio legend, I don't mean that in a you're older than me kind of way. I mean, like every time we have a guest here, they're like, I know you. I know you, Mick. You're literally a legend.
I've got a face for radio.
In the Orlando market. Good thing we don't have to dress up for radio either.
True.
Huh?
That's true. Yeah.
I love it.
T-shirts and shorts.
And as always, scurrying around, pushing the buttons, making sure we go on the air.
Yes.
Really?
is my good buddy from the sister station next door, 103.1 The Wolf. It's Skid.
I'm the man behind the curtain. Don't mind me. I'm actually troubleshooting right now. So
What's up? We only had an hour show prep before.
I know.
I mean, no big deal.
Yeah, that's
Fine,
okay.
Skid.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
whatever.
worry about it at all.
Well, what you mean? This isn't practice?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right.
A lot of times, especially in Orlando, a lot of times they'll say, look, we could really use the rain here. How often do you hear that? Like, we could really use the rain.
Oh, yeah.
This week has been an absolute washout.
It has.
I mean, thank you for coming to that event with me the other night for Sabatini and for the open house. But I'm telling you, like 20 people showed up. It was freaking raining sideways. I was waiting for the hailstorm. I mean, it was.
Folks, Justin wanted us to set up the tent outside.
I was like, look, go
it's
ahead.
Like, no.
It's probably going to stop in a minute anyway.
Yeah,
I don't
and then
see
start back up.
I mean, it was bad.
Yeah, it was
windy, raining, and it's like every day. I mean, how's the weekend supposed to be? Do we know? I mean, how are we looking?
It's supposed to be raining all weekend long.
We're pretty iffy. Yeah.
We've actually had events that have been canceled because of the rain.
Really?
Yeah. Already.
When's it ever? Is it going to stop at some point, or is it going to go on for weeks?
I say
Maybe
build
Tuesday.
an ark.
Tuesday.
What's that?
Build an ark.
Yeah, there you
I like
go.
it.
So before we talk about legal stuff, I have a question for you guys. I need your help on this. I need to buy a cell. So look, I have a cell phone that is cracked, and someone was making fun of me this morning. The dude was like, "You're like this big hotshot lawyer guy. Why are you walking around with this cracked cell phone that you essentially cut your thumbs on every time you use it?" I mean, it's bad. I mean, it is really bad.
It is.
But I'm at a point in my life where I don't know how to buy a cell phone. I need your advice on this. So the last time I really remember buying a cell phone myself, you go to the store, Verizon, AT&T, whatever it is, and they're like, well, you sign up for another year contract and we give you one for free, right? Are those days over? Or are we still in those days? Can
I
someone
think
tell
they
me how
are.
to buy a cell phone? Because I don't know. First of all, I hate doing it. Yeah. I hate going to these stores. But I guess I have to. How do I buy a cell phone anymore?
Well, like when I went to T-Mobile from Verizon, they make you buy their phone because my phone wouldn't transfer. So I had to get a new phone, but...
So do you have to pay full price? I mean, it's like $800, right? Or $1,000?
Yeah, mine was a couple of hundred.
Really?
For an Android, yeah.
What? Any
Well,
idea?
you normally try to look for the deal, and you make sure that you go to the actual store, the Verizon store, because there are other stores out there that look like Verizon stores. They're authorized dealers.
Yes.
And that has gotten me in the past where all of a sudden I got all these charges, and that's because they were an authorized dealer. They weren't the Verizon store, and that's how they're making their money. Mm-hmm. So if you want to save on money, go straight to the source.
So let's say I want to buy a cell phone, not like the newest Apple iPhone, whatever, okay? But like the next to newest, right? And I want to go buy it just brand new at, let's say I have AT&T. So I want to go to the AT&T store. How much is that going to set me back? Is this like $1,000, like $200? What do you think?
Yeah, about $1,000, but it depends on the store. It depends on the store.
Or if you sign up for one of their contracts, they might have a special deal for you.
And then so let's say
you're locked in.
And now all these stores are popping up now that say iPhone repair or fix your phone, whatever. Any idea what it costs to go get the screen replaced?
I haven't done one of those yet.
That's a good question. Yeah, the screen. It's probably not just $100.
$100 probably.
Probably.
So I don't know what's better. I mean, do I buy?
How
What
old-
about insurance?
how
Like if
old's
you,
the phone?
I don't know, maybe a year or two.
Yeah, time
Something
to get a
like
new
that?
one. Time to
You
get a
think
new
so?
one. Yeah.
Man.
I mean, they just don't last. I don't think.
Do you remember the days when you have to go get a new cell phone and they'd have to plug one in here and one in here to move the contacts over?
Oh, yeah.
And it took like an hour and a half. And they looked at you like they wanted to
Take
kill
forever.
you too. But, I don't know. So if you guys have any advice, let me know. If you're watching on Facebook, send me a message and tell me how to buy a new cell phone and how much I should pay. I don't necessarily need the newest, but like the next to newest. You know what I mean? I'm the guy who buys the 2017 car, not the 2018.
Yeah.
Give me the demo. Something like that, right? Exactly. Unless you're going to lease a car, give me the demo. Give me like a year-old car. 321-282-1055 www.youhavepower.com. You're listening to Justin Clark Behind the Law on Bud 94.1. I'm not a trained broadcast professional. Skid, I think I need your help on this.
Okay,
one.
what?
Because this is so I'm pretty good at saying W. You don't say W.
You have to say double U.
Okay, but
Two
here's what
words.
annoys me. The one that annoys me is 94. You can't say 90. It's got to be 90,
90,
but that sounds
yes.
obnoxious.
It
but
does.
It's got it. But you have to say 90.
That's the radio way.
Oh, that's the one that annoys me the most.
Yeah.
Bud 94.1.
94.1, yes.
Welcome to the show. I'm Bud 94.1. I don't know. It just always has annoyed me. I'm good with www.youhavepower.com.
You say that very well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I've said it a few times over the years. Oh, goodness. Great. All right. Behind the Law with me, Attorney Justin Clark, answering your questions at 321-282-1055. The website, www.youhavepower.com.
That's very good. Very good.
And joining me to my right now, I think we're sharing microphones today,
Yes.
is our lead attorney in the office, Wayne Spivak. Wayne, welcome back from court, first of all.
Thank you.
Hope we didn't lose. How'd it go?
It was not a court hearing in front of the judge. It was a meeting with the bankruptcy trustee, so it went fine.
Gotcha. All right. So here's one question that I have for you, because I don't necessarily know the answer, but I hear you talking about it in the office all the time. And Wayne handles all of the bankruptcies in the office. So when we're talking to a bankruptcy client, one of the first things he says is, how many cars do you have and how are they titled? And the people look at me like, I don't know, like me and my wife, I think, something like that. But then you always ask the question, is the car titled John Smith and Jane Smith, or John Smith or Jane Smith? What is the difference, and how does that affect people?
Well, I asked that question because in bankruptcy, you're allowed to keep some of your assets and not use them to pay creditors. One of the exemptions that's out there is called tenancy by the entireties, where husband and wife buy property together while they're married. You can't take property away from one spouse and use it to pay the debts of the other spouse, but you have to both own it together. So when I have a husband or wife filing bankruptcy by themselves, because they're the only ones with debt, and they have a car titled together, it makes a difference if the title actually says husband and wife, husband or wife. If it says husband or wife, that means either one of them could go and sell the car on their own without the other's signature. There's case law out there that says, and it's also statutory, if your car is titled husband or wife, then the trustee can take that car, sell it, pay off the one spouse's debt. They have to give the other half back to the other spouse. If it says husband and wife, then you get the exemption. People don't know this. They don't plan ahead when they go to buy a car. The dealership just says, here you go. They always select the or option because that's the default option, I guess. So people don't realize that when one files a bankruptcy, that the car could be in jeopardy.
So let me get this straight, all right? I go and buy a car for my wife. And I'm trying to do a nice thing here, and I want to put it in her name. I'm the one that's paying for it or paid for it in cash. And it says, Justin Clark, maybe I shouldn't use me as an example. And it says, Justin Smark and Shelly Smark. Or it might say Justin Clark or Shelly Smark. Mm-hmm. There's a chance that I could have that car sold out from under me if I title it one of those ways. Which one? And how should you, when you buy a car with two people on it, how should we title that? That's right on the other side of this break. Justin Clark with you on Bud 9041. Welcome back to the program, and thank you for joining me for another edition of Behind the Law. 321-282-1055, www.youhavepower.com. Joined by Wayne Spivak, our main bankruptcy attorney at the firm. If you have any questions at all, again, the phone number 321-282-1055. I've been hearing this lately, and it's always been shocking to me a little bit about how we title our cars. I mean, this is a very, very interesting thing that no one knows about.
God, really?
Because when you buy about the difference and how we really should be thinking about how to title these cars.
I'll give you an example.
All
right. Recently had a client, husband and wife. Husband had to file bankruptcy. They had a car that was paid off. It was an expensive car. It was probably worth about $15,000. So the title said husband, wife. The title itself that you get from the DMV does not print the word and or. Neither of those words are on there. We just assume that it's titled correctly. I claim the exemption for tenancy by the entireties, where you can't take the car owned by both of them to pay the husband's debts. But in that case, the trustee went a little deeper, pulled up the records from the DMV, and said, nope, it's actually titled husband or wife, not husband and wife. If it had said husband and wife, then the car cannot be used. But if it said husband or wife, which it did, then one of them has the right to go sell the car without the other one's permission. So the trustee rightfully pointed out, this means that we need to use half of the value of the car to pay husband's credit cards. So either give me half the value of the car, about $7,000 some dollars, right now, or you can hand over the keys and title. I'll sell the car for you, and I'll give the wife half the money back because it's hers, and we'll use the other half to pay the credit cards.
Nice. What about this situation? Because I have clients come in all the time to say, hey, I bought a car for my kid. My name's on it, but I bought a car for my adult child. What if an adult child has a drug problem or whatever, has a gambling addiction and gets behind and they need some quick cash? I imagine under this scenario, if the car title says father and son, you're okay. But I think if it says father or son, the son could go just sell it on his own.
Yeah.
Well, and again, tenancy by the entirety is the exemption I was just talking about is specific to husband and wife. It's a special status.
Okay.
If you own a car jointly with your son or your relative, then you each own half the value of the car. If one of them files bankruptcy, then half of the value of the car could come into play.
All right, so it's not as big of a deal, I guess, if it's father and son. But is there any reason if you're husband and wife that you can think of that you would want it to say or? I mean, is there any...
To say or just makes it easier for one of them to go and take the car and sell it and change the title over.
That's not good.
I mean, I think I would highly recommend...
Here's an example.
All right.
Personal experience. When I got divorced, we bought a car together. It said or on the title. After we got divorced, I went down to the DMV and I had it retitled into just my name and refinanced it just my name. Because the title said or, I was allowed to do that without my ex's permission.
And did she punch you or anything?
No.
Okay.
That wasn't the issue.
Okay.
I
was making sure. I didn't know what was going on
We
there.
had agreed I would get that car. But the point is, if we hadn't have agreed, I would have the right to go and do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. So be very careful. Look, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Do they not? That's my understanding, if not more. And I know we love each other now, but let's protect ourselves from... having one of these fights, or someone wants to get back at the other one, and they can just go sell your car. If we put or when we buy a car as husband and wife, your spouse can go sell that car without your knowledge or permission. They just have to go sell it, or put it in their name alone. Right? They can just go to the DMV and sign it over to themselves.
Now it's mine.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit in the real estate world, because I imagine that when you're buying a property with a spouse, that you have to figure out how you want it to be labeled, whether it's joint tenancy or tenancy by the entirety. How does this work in the real estate market, or when you're trying to buy a house?
If you're husband and wife buying a house together and you put yourselves in the title, you'd probably want to put it tenancy by the entireties. Most people would claim the homestead exemption anyway. In Florida, everyone knows the homestead exemption. They can't take your house away to pay creditors. Well, the IRS can do anything they want, but your credit cards cannot get your house if you claim the homestead exemption. So I don't really come across an issue that much. I just claim it as homestead if there's equity in the house.
What is the difference in joint tenancy and tenancy by the entirety? I'm not trying to give you a real estate exam here. I'm just trying to get an idea. Like, people do ask me that, okay, well, I own a house and I own it with someone else. If I die, does my entire property go to the person I own it with, or does it go to my heirs? How does that work?
Well, in tenancy by the entirety, it's owned jointly by husband and wife. If one of them dies, there's automatic survivorship rights. Again, special status for married people. And non-married people, you own it as joint tenants. Let's say, mother has a condo and wants to add daughter onto the title in case something happens, kind of an advanced estate planning thing. They can add the daughter to the title and say joint tenants with right of survivorship. That way, if mom dies, daughter automatically gets it. You don't have to worry about any of the other heirs getting it. If you don't add that there's a right of survivorship, then each of them owns half, and when one passes away, then that person's heirs have a share in the estate that owns half of that property.
And when you're evaluating someone who is trying to file bankruptcy, how does the joint tenancy versus tenancy by the entirety come into play?
Well, again, I would prefer to claim homestead if I can.
Okay.
If I can't, then I look to see if there's tenancy by the entirety, which, again, is only for married people. There is some case law that says if you own something, tenancy or joint tenancy with a relative, and one of them files bankruptcy, then the trustee can come along and take half of that property to use to pay creditors. Classic example. This was out of the Southern District of Florida. Think of Fort Lauderdale, maybe Miami. Mom and daughter. That's the scenario that I was just describing. Mom was old, wanted to put daughter on the condo in case something happened. Added daughter to the condo title. Then daughter had to file bankruptcy. Daughter had never lived in the condo, had no interest, never paid the mortgage. Name wasn't on the loan. It was just on the title in case something happened to elderly mom, so that she would end up with it. But when daughter filed bankruptcy, the trustee said, you own half of that, so we're going to use half the value of that condo to pay your creditors. So either give me half the value of the condo from somewhere, or we'll sell the condo and we'll get half the value and use it to pay creditors.
You're listening to Behind the Law with me, attorney Justin Clark. Any question that you may have, 321-282-1055, www.youhavepower.com. We're talking to attorney Wayne Spivak. He's the main bankruptcy lawyer in our firm, and a damn good one, too, if I might add. But
thank you very much.
Let me ask this other question as well. So when you're evaluating someone who's going to file bankruptcy, oftentimes I will hear them say, well, I have this particular bank account, but it's really just for my kids, right? And I have $20,000 in there. I know that if you're going to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you don't want to have $20,000 in your personal bank account. But what is just for kids? I mean, what really counts as that's really just for the kids? How should we label these accounts, and how do we really look at that from a bankruptcy perspective?
No, the answer that you would expect me to give is it really all depends.
Oh, good.
Right?
Thank you.
I would want to look at what the deposits were going into the account. I would want to see how the account is labeled. For example, if we have a client who has a child that gets Social Security benefits from a deceased parent, and the client is just a custodian of the account, usually they would have an account labeled, debtor or Jane Doe as representative payee for Jane Doe Jr. Then all the money going into that account, you could easily say, belongs just to the child. Yeah. What we look for is what the deposits are, where it's coming from. If there's money coming in from the grandparents for an allowance, and your name is just on there as the custodian because it's a minor child and you want to have a youth checking account for your kid, then instead of listing it as an account you would own, I might consider listing it as an account that you're the custodian for, but it's really the kid's money. Now, if it's a few $100 for a kid's allowance, probably not a big deal. If it's $20,000, we're going to have to take a really close look and see what we can do to get that exempted, if anything.
So how can you label those accounts? Let's say I want to start an account for my daughter right now, just so I know that if something happens to me, she's taken care of, right? I don't even know what accounts are really available out there, but I know I have a lot of debt. I know bankruptcy might be something I have to think about in the future, but I do want to put a little bit of money away for my daughter, or better yet, my mom, sends money to say I want to take care of Sophia, and I want to set up an account, but I know I might have to file bankruptcy down the road. What should I call this account? Should I call it the Justin Clark and Sophia account, or is there a certain account I can set up? Any idea what's going to get through the trustee's office?
Well, if you're talking about, again, a youth checking account, I have 3 teenagers. I set up youth checking accounts for all of them. They had a debit card. I could put money into it. Those kind of accounts are just labeled, joint accounts. I'm the parent, and then the kid's on there. But when the kids work at McDonald's and their direct deposit goes into there, it's easy to show where those deposits are. But if you're talking about long-term planning and you really want to have an investment built up for the kid in case something happens to you, I would consider opening up an account that's normally exempt anyway, like an education fund or an IRA. That way, you can claim it as exempt just because of the status of the account. Education funds for the kids are exempt. Now, you don't want to go and stuff it with, $20,000 in cash and file bankruptcy the next month. Then it looks like you're just trying to hide your money to avoid your creditors. But if you're putting $100 or so every month into an education account, or the prepaid college fund or something like that, then those funds are generally exempt anyway.
Speaking of exemptions, I guess, I think what you're talking about is money that if you were to file bankruptcy, or even if someone were to sue you, they can't really attack that type of account. What other sort of types of accounts can you set up that are considered exempt? And then also when you're doing planning, or you have a lot of debt and you might have to file bankruptcy, you probably have questions about, is the 401k exempt? Or is that 529 plan exempt? Or let's say you're getting sued. Let's say you got foreclosed on and they're filing for a deficiency judgment. Can they attach that IRA account? Or can they attach to your Social Security benefits And we're going to answer those questions and many more right on the other side of this break. My name is Justin Clark, Bud 94.1. Welcome back to the show. My name is Justin Clark. The name of the show, Behind the Law, right here on Bud 94.1, 321-282-1055. Plenty of information on the website, www.youhavepower.com. You can watch the show live on my Facebook page or watch any past show. If you have any questions about anything that we do in the office, you can watch any past show we've ever done here and learn quite a bit if I don't put you to sleep. 321-282-1055. To my right is Orlando radio legend Mick Dillon. Mick, what's up, bud?
Just listening and learning today.
We have officially 3 working microphones now.
Yes.
It's great to hear your voice.
It's good.
Great to hear your voice in the headphones. Skid is here from next door, 103.1 The Wolf.
I'm just glad everything's working right now. That's all I care about.
You were like scrambling around. That was a first for me. You're quicker than I thought.
Well, thank you.
You can move fast, Justin.
And
I'm going to tell you.
my good friend and attorney in the office, Wayne Spivak, joining as well. Wayne handles bankruptcy. But Wayne, a little bit about you, because you have a unique story in that you've sort of represented all types of people and individuals. So a lot of people don't know this about you, but I think you really started your career working for what we call creditors, like for the banks. You were the one really suing the consumer. I think it was mostly foreclosure stuff back then, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, one of my first jobs out of law school, I ended up at a large firm that represented banks if they were coming to foreclose on you. I worked in the bankruptcy department. This was back in 2008. There was a lot of foreclosures going on back then.
Yeah, I'd say.
I just kind of fell into it. I worked for a firm that represented creditors for several years. Then I came to Orlando to work for the Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee here in Orlando as her staff attorney. And now I've been with your firm for about a year and a couple of months representing consumers and enjoying the job very much. Thank you for having me.
But seeing it from all angles has to be sort of eye-opening for you, because you've seen it from, there are really 3 aspects of any sort of bankruptcy case, Mick. It's the creditor, the bank or the credit card or whoever's suing you, the trustee's office, who's sort of the gatekeeper, so to speak. And then on our side here, we represent the consumer, the individual who's going through bankruptcy. And I don't know many people who have really worked on all 3 sides of it. But I think also, to the general consumer, the trustee's office is still somewhat of a mystery to us. Like, we don't really know what they do, why they're there. We just know that when we file bankruptcy, we have to go there and spend 5 minutes with them at this trustee's meeting. What is the trustee's office? Help me understand this.
I get that question all the time, actually. The U.S. trustee is under the Department of Justice. U.S. trustee's office was created to monitor bankruptcy, to make sure nobody was doing anything inappropriate, nobody was committing fraud. There are assistant U.S. trustees in every major field office. We have one in Orlando. They also have a field office in Tampa. They're not the police. They don't have badges. They don't have arrest powers, but they investigate bankruptcy, and if they see anything improper and they think it's a criminal matter, they could refer it up the chain of command to the IRS or the FBI or whatever agency needs to be alerted. The U.S. trustee cannot possibly review every bankruptcy case. 10 to 15,000 bankruptcy cases in Orlando over the last several years. They can't look at every one of them. So the U.S. trustee, Department of Justice, appoints individual attorneys to work on their behalf. Kind of like a subcontractor is the best way to explain it. There are several Chapter 7 trustees. There is one standing Chapter 13 trustee in Orlando. That's who I used to work for.
Oh, I thought you were going to say there's one that's really mean.
No.
Okay.
No.
I thought we were going to call names out today.
No.
All right, good.
I would never do that.
All right, good.
But their job is to monitor the bankruptcy cases closely. The Chapter 7 trustees are interested in whether or not there are any assets that could be used to pay creditors. The Chapter 13 trustee looks at that and also looks to see whether or not you're making a correct repayment plan. If there are problems, they are a neutral third party. They'll report to the court what's going on. They might report to the U.S. trustee if they see something egregious going on. But the people that we're talking about when we say the trustee, they're not the government. They're not government employees. They're individual people that are setting up. Well, for example, the Chapter 13 trustee is not a government employee. She's a neutral third party. She has a trusteeship that's set up as an independent entity. And her job is to make sure you're getting your payments in that you're supposed to for your repayment plan. She sends the payments out to the creditors per your repayment plan. And she explains to the judge if there are problems. So when we say the trustee, we're not talking about the government. We're talking about people who are appointed by the government to monitor the case.
So in the Middle District of Florida here, Mick, there's two types of bankruptcies we talk about on this show mostly, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, right? So the Chapter 13 trustee sort of has a little bit of a different role than these Chapter 7 trustees, and they get paid differently. First of all, I would say, and I'm not trying to score any points here at all, I believe that the Chapter 13 trustee's office here and locally, the one we have in the Middle District, is fantastic. I mean, I think they're very fair. I think that they're in the middle. I mean, they're like the referee kind of. They're not on one side or the other, but I think she's great. I mean, I really do.
And the Chapter 13 trustee here in Orlando, Lori Weatherford, is well liked and respected. You ask any bankruptcy attorney here in Orlando, they're very happy that she is the trustee, and we hope she is for a long time.
That's right. And I'm not trying to score points. I'm just being honest. You know, I'm always honest on the show, Mick. And then but when it comes, her office handles all of the Chapter 13 cases. So it'll always say Lori Weatherford trustee, and then they have staff attorneys that work there as well, who sort of oversee the cases. Now, it's totally different though when you file Chapter 7. There are many Chapter 7 trustees who are they have their own firms or whatever, right? I mean, how does...
They have their own entities, that's right.
They all have their own entities. They're all just practicing attorneys who also do the Chapter 7 trustee work. I mean, is it fair to say most of them do other types of work too, or they...
Some of them might, but from what I've seen, most of them just have their trusteeship.
And then how does the Chapter 7 trustee get paid?
The Chapter 7 trustee gets paid if they take an asset from you. They get a fee based on whatever assets they recover to pay creditors. It's a percentage. So if they can get that car from you, when they auction the car and sell it off, then they're entitled to a percentage of that sale as their fee.
So think about it like this, Mick. Let's say we're going to file Chapter 7. We're married, right? We're going to file Chapter 7 together. We have a ton of debt, but I also have $20,000 in the bank. Well, in a Chapter 7, a liquidation case, you can't really have $20,000 sitting around.
No.
But maybe I'm going to file on $100,000 in credit card debt. So we're going to have to come up with an amount that we're going to have to pay to settle this. So maybe it's not the entire 20,000. Maybe it's a little bit less than that the trustee is going to require you to essentially turn some of that money over, and then they're going to take their fee. That's the only way they get paid, or...
That's how they get paid in a Chapter 7 case.
And do you know what the percentage is?
Well, it's a sliding scale.
Okay.
I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to give hard numbers, but it's it's a percentage up to the first, 5 or 10,000, and another percentage for anything on top of that. I usually don't try to memorize it. I look at the sliding scale when I need to know what it is.
But that's what gives them incentive to try to make sure that someone who's filing for the liquidation actually doesn't have a bunch of money sitting around, and that's essentially how they get paid. It is how they get paid, and that's any idea how many Chapter 7 trustees there really are out there? I know it's a guess, but I mean, is it like 2 or is it like 20?
In Orlando, I think there's about 10.
Okay. How do you become a Chapter 7 trustee?
If there's an opening, they'll put out the word, and then you can apply. And the U.S. Trustee's Office selects, applicants.
And the Chapter 13 trustee gets paid totally differently. Explain to me how the Chapter 13 trustee gets paid, and let me know, is that a for-profit business or not?
No. The Chapter 13 trustee is entirely nonprofit. Their budget does not come from the government. The Chapter 13 trustee has to have a budget approved by the U.S. trustee, but they're not a profit organization. They're allowed to charge statutorily a 10% fee on all payments. So if you have to give the trustee $1,000 to divide up among creditors, then add an extra 10% for her fee. That's the only money the Chapter 13 trustee receives is a fee based on your payments. That's how she runs her office and pays the rent and buys copier paper and salaries, etc.
All right, so take me through this. So let's say we're going to do a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. We have a house. We're going to do the modification on the house. And then, so the mortgage payment now, instead of $1,800, we got it reduced to $1,200. Mm-hmm. And then we also have a car payment that we're going to pay through this Chapter 13 plan. That's $500. And then we got to pay a little bit of our unsecured debt back as well through this Chapter 13 plan, right? So let's say the payment is $2,000 a month that I have to pay to the trustee's office. And then, so when you do this, you pay it to the trustee's office, and they actually pay the bank. Then they pay the car. They do all that for you. So there's sort of a fee associated with that, I would say. Mm-hmm. How much of my money does go to the trustee's office at that point?
If you paid your mortgage and your car and something to your credit cards and whatever else you have to pay, let's say that all of those payments total up to $2,000, then you're going to have to take the $2,000, add a 10% fee to it. So you're going to have to give the trustee $2,200 in order to pay the trustee, so she can take her fee and then pay the rest of your creditors. The way that you calculate that, take whatever you owe. Let's say $2,000 a month is what has to go to your mortgage, your car, etc.
Right.
Divide that by 0.9. You divide by 0.9, that comes out to actually $2,222. That's the payment you got to make to the trustee. So out of that, the trustee takes her fee and then divides up the rest of the payments and sends out them the checks every month.
All right, so say this. Okay, I'm getting it now. So the more I'm paying through this plan, the more I have to pay the trustee. So what if I want to put my car payment separately? I want to say, look, I don't want to pay for this car through this trustee thing because I don't want to pay the percentage. Can I just pay that separately, or does it have to go through this plan?
You can propose paying it separately, but the bankruptcy court's administrative order in Middle District clearly says that you have to have had that car payment set up on automatic draft for 6 months prior to filing bankruptcy in order for that to be permissible. If you haven't, you can ask permission, but the trustee may object to that.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
All right, so let's say I have a second home, and it's a rental property. You know, it's not like a vacation home for me. It's a rental property. It's an investment property. I don't know whether I should keep it or not. I know I have to file bankruptcy, but I have an investment home, and I'm wondering, because I heard something about a cram down, right? What is this cram down thing? We're going to tell you on the other side of this break if you can actually cram down that mortgage and make that mortgage company take less than you actually owe them. Justin Clark with you, Bud 94.1. What's that?
Exemptions. That's kind of.
Welcome back to the show. Justin Clark with you for one more segment. 321-282-1055 www.youhavepower.com with attorney Wayne Spivak, my favorite bankruptcy attorney in town, and I think the best. Joining me, I'm biased, granted, but I think the best. Wayne Spivak joining us today, and we were talking before the break about cram down. Can you explain to me what a cram down is? Because I'm still a little bit confused about this.
Sure. The cram down is the term of art that we use in the bankruptcy world to say that we're going to pay a debt for less than what's actually owed. If you have property, a second home that's not your residence, or even a first home that's not your residence, as long as it's not your residence, you can propose to repay what it's worth, not what you owe on it. This was really big in 08, 09. There were people who bought an investment condo for vacation. They paid $120,000 for it. Now it's worth $30,000 because the market tanked. One of the things you can do is to propose repaying the loan for $30,000, what you owe on it, not what you owe on it, but what it's worth. In order to do that, you have to pay it off during the 5-year repayment plan. So you'd propose a new payment based on paying $30,000 over 5 years. And then you'd have to show that you have the rental income to justify paying for that.
So it is a way, if you have an investment property, though, that's way underwater, to get it crammed down, and the mortgage company really has no defense. They have to.
Well, the defense is if you say it's worth $30,000, the mortgage company can say it's really worth more than that, and then we could discuss what the value is.
So how do we
negotiation.
I mean, how do we discuss that? Do I show an appraisal, and does it? What if the whole house is full of mold? Does that count as part of the value?
Sure. I mean, the process is I would file a motion saying that we should cram down the property to the value. I think the value is $30,000. The creditor has time to object. If they don't object, then it's $30,000. If they do object and they say, nope, we think it's worth more, then we get into appraisals. And of course, appraisals take into account the condition of the property. Now, the condition of the property really shouldn't be something that you've done to it to make it worth less.
Of course, no.
We can't say there was a case in court a couple of years ago where somebody claimed their commercial property was worth next to nothing because there was hazardous material and garbage buried under the land. But it came out that he was the one who buried the garbage. So you can't do something to your own property to try to make it worth less.
Yeah.
But if there's damage to it and it's worth less and there's no insurance benefits to fix that back up, sure, you can take that into an account through the normal appraisal process.
So one of the biggest joys, and I'll speak for you on this, that we have is when we have a couple come in and they're clearly stressed out. They're going to that next phase of life. They're 63, 65 years old, and they're retiring, and they don't have the income coming in that they once had. It's scary. They're going into this next phase of life with $50,000, $70,000 in credit card debt, and they simply don't know what to do. And oftentimes these people also have health issues as well, and they come in and they say, look, I have no money in the bank. I'm getting a Social Security check. I've got a retirement check coming from the railroad in New York or whatever. And I also have a 401k and an IRA. And that's all I have. If I file bankruptcy or if I get sued by one of these credit card companies, can they come and take my 401k? Can they come and take my IRA? Can they come and take my Social Security? These are the questions I need to know.
Yeah, and sadly that happens a lot more often than I would like to think, where someone's coming up to their retirement years and they still have lingering credit card debt that they could not pay off during their working years. When you file bankruptcy, you're allowed to claim certain items as exempt from having to be used to repay your creditors. Homestead exemption, easiest example everyone knows in Florida, you can claim your house exempt. There's other things you can claim exempt. You can claim up to $1,000 worth of anything. You can claim up to $1,000 worth of equity in a car, if you have equity in a car. Your 401k, IRA, and other retirement plans are completely 100% exempt. They cannot force you to use that money to pay your creditors. Now, again, that's if you've, in good faith, paid into it over the years. That's not if you've taken cash that you had hidden under the mattress and stuffed it into your IRA the month before filing bankruptcy. But if you've built up a retirement account, it's exempt. They can't take that to pay your creditors. They also can't use your pension to pay creditors. Social Security money is completely exempt. You can save up to 6 months worth of Social Security checks in your bank account, and then that bank account would be exempt from paying creditors if your money is only from Social Security. So there are exemptions when you retire and you want to pay off, when you don't want to pay off your credit cards because you can't afford it. We can usually use the power of bankruptcy to get rid of those credit cards and avoid having to lose any assets over it.
One of the biggest questions we always face when telling a client what we think they should do is it a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13? And the biggest issue in deciding if we're going to do the really quick, easy Chapter 7, which is the liquidation, versus the a little more complex, takes more time, Chapter 13, is what we call the means test. Explain to me what the means test is.
Well, after 2005, Congress made it a little harder to file a Chapter 7 liquidation bankruptcy where you get rid of all of your debt in a few months. You have to show that you're below a certain income level. The threshold is the median income in the state. So in Florida, if you're a household of one, it's about $46,000 right now. And if you're a married couple with two, it's a bit higher. You have to show that your income is below that low. Social Security does not count towards that calculation at all. If you're below that level, then great. You automatically qualify to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy if you want to. If you're above that level, then the second test they go to is what they call the means test. This is where you calculate whether or not you can afford to pay your bills on your income, even though your income is above the median in Florida. And sometimes we're able to get someone qualified to do a Chapter 7, wipe out all their debt really quickly, even though their income is above median. It really all just depends on individual circumstances.
So, okay, so Social Security does not count. What about that annuity I'm getting, or what about that retirement check I'm getting from IBM?
That counts towards the income threshold. It doesn't count towards building up an asset. They can't take the asset to pay creditors, but they can use that. We use that in the calculation as to whether or not you have income that's above the threshold. But I haven't seen anybody come by recently with a pension that's above the median income. Not many people have a pension that's above $46,000 a year for one person.
Boy, that'd be nice.
Yeah. That'd be a really sweet pension.
Yeah.
Because Detroit filed bankruptcy. You know, it was all the car guys who had all the money coming in, and they restructured that, so to speak.
Right.
Unbelievable.
They still have all the money.
Maybe if I get somebody who retired from the military, then went back and worked as a cop for 20 years and got a second pension from the city or state, maybe those two pensions together might equal more than the median income, but not likely.
So I know I'm filing bankruptcy, and you and I get this question every day, but I have student loans. When can I include a student loan and get a discharge on that student loan in bankruptcy?
It's very hard to discharge your student loans in bankruptcy outright. You have to show a complete inability to pay your student loans and no foreseeable way to pay them into the future. It's almost a absolute disability standard, if you will. Yeah. It's very tough to meet. Not impossible, but tough. There's also some case law that seems to indicate that if your student loans were used for something besides education, for example, if you got a student loan to pay the rent, that portion might be dischargeable, but it's very complicated. In general, student loans, we can't discharge them, but that doesn't mean that bankruptcy can't help you deal with it somehow. We can help you get into a repayment status again once we have bankruptcy. We can pay the student loans through the bankruptcy and have you avoid going into default. While you're in a Chapter 13 repayment plan, your student loans are not going to come after you and try to collect. So student loans are a special breed of debt. We can deal with it, but again, it's everybody's on their own individual circumstances.
So it is difficult to discharge student loan debt in a bankruptcy, but it's at least worth a review, I would think, because it seems like we're seeing cases that say maybe some of them can't. For example, we both went to law school. When I got out of law school, I had no money, like not a penny. And they offered this bar study loan. This is essentially just drinking money and rent money while you take the bar exam. I was drinking Grey Goose at the time, mostly every night.
You need a little help.
Because, they're giving you like $15,000 to get through that couple of months. I took every penny of it. Would that be the type of money that you could potentially, I'm not making you guarantee it by any means, but is that the type of money that you could potentially get discharged through a bankruptcy?
Yeah.
Arguably, yes. You could raise the argument that portion is dischargeable because it wasn't used directly for education benefit.
It was used for Grey Goose.
Paying tuition, right? But in order to do that, we would have to have all the records of when those were dispersed and what they were for and what you spent it on, et cetera. Sometimes it's hard to go back 10 years later and build a record like that.
Oh, yeah.
Are we seeing more and more cases come down in regards to student loans? Is this an area that's really blossoming in bankruptcy, would you say?
We have a lot of people that have student loan issues when they come in. It is a bigger and bigger problem.
What do you see happening? Do you see the bankruptcy courts becoming more flexible and letting more get discharged, or staying very steadfast and we don't want to discharge them?
There's been some movement in getting student loans discharged, but I wouldn't say there's a floodgate opening just yet.
And are there any parts of the country, bankruptcy-wise, that you think is more liberal in getting rid of them, or is it pretty much nationwide?
Well, of course, we're going to have certain jurisdictions that are more liberal than others, but the jurisdictions that are better for filing a bankruptcy with a student loan, I could not tell you right now.
Gotcha.
You know what? The solution to this whole thing
what
is to lower the education cost.
Exactly,
don't
right?
have to
It's
go get that
unbelievable.
loan.
If they would agree, I would agree.
And here's what I'm seeing too. It's doctors and lawyers. Hey, lawyers that come apply for jobs with me, they're coming in with $250,000 in student loan debt.
That's insane.
And it is absolutely It's almost
$250,000
insurmountable at times. I mean, it
Jeez.
is almost, and doctors especially. I mean, doctors go to school even longer than lawyers do, as you probably know.
You know, disc jockeys didn't cost that much when I went to school.
But what I'm also seeing is the people who, in 2008, when the economy collapsed, everyone who was a mortgage broker got fired because no one was doing any mortgages. The banks shut down. They all became salespeople for these for-profit institutions. They all became salespeople to try to get you to come to school there. And they would say, look, the tuition's only 30 grand to be an AC mechanic, 30 grand for a year. It's going to take 2 years. And now all these people who were already adults at the time went back to school because they couldn't get a job. And now they're riddled with 100 grand in credit and student loan debt. But really, it wasn't for a job that is going to come anywhere close to paying it back. And that's the real problem. And if you have any student loan problems at all, or you want to talk about bankruptcy, any financial issues whatsoever, give me a call, Justin Clark, 321-282-1055. YouHavePower.com. Wayne Spivak, thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
Mick Dolan, I don't know a whole lot, but I do know one little thing.
What's that?
I will see you right back here next Saturday on Bud 94.1 and the Bud 94.1 app.